Good morning. I'm Vlad Coric, the CEO of Biohaven Pharmaceuticals. First of all, I'd like to thank Fierce Pharma for the opportunity to speak during Digital Pharma Innovation Week and discuss with you the bold marketing programs that help Biohaven launch Nurtec ODT and propel our new migraine treatments into a market-leading positions despite the headwinds of the COVID-19 global pandemic. As drug developers, we all know you can't control the winds, that's for sure. Sometimes the wind's directly at our backs and you barely need to unfurl your sails to be carried along the way. At other times, you face the most punishing headwinds that make it seem like reaching your destination will be nearly impossible. As innovators, we can't control the winds, but we have to learn how to harness whatever wind is out there. I hope to communicate today how we innovated with digital and other technology to help navigate the challenges that were presented by COVID-19. And I think for all of us, we can take those lessons that we learned from this challenge and apply it to future drug launches. Before we get into the digital marketing of Nurtec, I wanted to provide a little bit of background so that you can get the context of understanding this drug launch and what we were facing going into the pandemic. Nurtec is only one of two oral CGRP targeting medications for migraine, and we launched this in March of this year. And yes, as you recall, March was the first week of that lockdown pandemic. So our main competitor in this space, though, is a much larger company that had a 2-month to 3 lead on us prior to the pandemic. So our competitor, of course, is AbbVie, a company with over 40,000 employees and many more financial resources than little Biohaven. And so we knew that this was going to be an important launch for us. Now, your launch is really determined about what you can promote based on your approved drug label. And on this slide, I just wanted to highlight for everyone what we believe were the major differentiation points for Nurtec ODT in the treatment of migraine as we're going into this launch. So first of all, you'll see by the slide that we're the only quick dissolve ODT formulation that targets CGRP receptors. And our drug begins to work within minutes, and it can get patients back to normal within 1 hour. And then our efficacy lasts for a full 2 days after a single dose of Nurtec ODT. So this profile is quite desirable and we think best in class. And the formulation that we have, this Nurtec ODT, allows you to disperse very quickly the medication without any need for water. And this offers patients a very convenient, discreet, and efficacious way to treat their migraine. So we were quite excited about our drug launch. Now, even before COVID, we knew we were building a modern pharmaceutical company. Biohaven has never followed the old big pharma playbook in anything that we've done. And I'd like to call attention to the fact that, we had constructed this company with a different model in mind. We're a decentralized organization that relies on technology, virtual detailing, social media, and a lot of, what I would call modern day tools to help us in what we need to do to deliver new drugs to patients. We've always challenged the status quo in our ability to tackle the high risk, high reward field of neurologic diseases, but also using that same philosophy across our entire go-to-market business model. We've built a patient-centric, agile sales force, and our marketing team has a digital-first mindset to fulfill our commercial launch goals for Nurtec ODT. As a company that was built for virtual interactions, we were already conceptualizing a different launch, but we quite didn't realize that we'd be able to completely pivot and have to be fully reliant on these new approaches to manage the adversity of the unexpected and unparalleled health crisis posed by COVID. So let me walk you through the challenges that were facing us. Well, about a year earlier, prior to launch, when none of us were talking about COVID, we were already trying to set the stage with what we thought was an innovative digital presence campaign. And this is back in July of 2019. And you see here, we were focused on shaping the market and really highlighting our launch by focused on an unbranded disease awareness campaign that we dubbed Demand More. Now, this digital campaign was designed to be raw and in your face. It was designed to highlight how many patients were feeling. Patients were not satisfied with their current migraine treatments due to side effects, due to having to take multiple medications and taking it frequently, and not getting the efficacy they wanted. So our advertising and social media marketing for the campaign was intentionally bold, as we wanted it to stand out for doctors and patients. Our message was clear. Patients deserve better treatment for migraine and needed to be active participants in demanding more for their treatment. This was not your typical pharma pre-launch campaign, but as you can see in this slide, the kind of things patients were holding on their placards: I need migraine relief with fewer side effects. I need an acute treatment that works in one dose, and patients are demanding these better aspects of treatment. So we were quite excited to roll that out as our first unbranded disease campaign. And then, of course, our FDA approval finally came this year. And when the FDA approved Nurtec ODT in February of 2020, we were quite excited, and it represented a watershed moment for the migraine community and Biohaven. For us, it was our first FDA-approved product built from our deep neuro-innovation pipeline. All the news outlets featured Nurtec ODT as a new migraine treatment, and you can see even here, Fierce Pharma on the right side of the slide with its headlines that Biohaven was ramping up a field sales team of over 500 individuals to take on our larger pharma competitors and to bring this new treatment to patients. This was all big news, but then at the same time, starting to creep up in this news, we were first starting to hear about COVID-19. So after approval, we did what most companies do as they get ready for a launch. You have a launch meeting to train everyone. We hosted our first national sales meeting in late February, as you see here, and we were so excited about finally being able to bring Nurtec ODT to patients. Now, I want you to think about the long path to drug approval. We all know how many drugs you have to research in order to get one approved, the years of efforts, in this case, over 10 years of collective efforts from R&D to getting a drug approved. And finally, you're ready to launch and you're at your launch meeting, and you can see the excitement from this slide. Look at the middle panel too. I wanted to highlight a patient of ours, Ellie Weiss, who's been on our studies for almost 3 years. And her mother, who was sharing their experience with Nurtec ODT with our sales team and educate them about what we were so excited about bringing to the broader patient community. Little do we know at the time that was going to be the last event that we'd all be together in person for the next several months. After coming back from our sales launch meeting and only 2 days of Nurtec promotion being in our sales field force's bag, in early March, the full force of COVID-19 hit the US, and we started to see state by state and then US-wide stay-at-home orders, causing delays and disruptions in both clinical trials and product launches across the industry. You can imagine how challenging the situation was for us. As the nation was grappling with what was an essential service, what was an essential worker that would be allowed to function in COVID, we were quickly seeing other larger pharma colleagues and companies announcing delaying their launches, making dire predictions about the impact of future revenue, and even some laying off workers. We started to get some of the same questions from our own investors and board members. You'd be surprised how quickly the questions came in. Would Biohaven dare to continue its launch efforts while we're seeing other larger companies that many more resources, many more people were all backing away? Now, we always talk about in the business world, there are critical decisions for a company that's really highlighted here. There probably, is no more important decision than how to react to a public health crisis like what was evolving at the time. For our company, we were at a true crossroads that had very serious implications that would affect patients and also our business if we misstepped with the wrong decision. Our Chief Commercial Officer, BJ Jones, and myself and our collective teams, we got into a war room strategy, and we were working around the clock for days and weeks on end to make sure that not only we make the right decision, but we executed the right strategy that stemmed from that decision. On the left side of the slide, you'll see the question, should we delay the launch? What would it mean to patients if we delayed the launch? We now had over 700 employees on payroll. What would that mean if we delayed the launch? What would investors think? Was it safe to be in the field? All this got pretty intense, especially as large companies quickly announced retracting their sales forces and delaying launches. There was an intense external pressure to fall in line and do the same thing. However, the path on the right really seemed most compelling to myself and our team internally. Look, as a physician and as individuals in the pharmaceutical industry, we have utmost responsibility to bring new drugs to patients and to help people. And migraine's a disabling illness. As our team members got together, we were all discussing, look, the mail is still being delivered, grocery stores are open, fast food chains, are open. And I think we're all really just motivated by the heroic actions of our first-line healthcare providers. You certainly provided a great example of how do you work through the pandemic. And so we knew we had to march forward. And so as the leaders at Biohaven got together, there really wasn't an option except for the bring your drug to patients option. Of course, we consider all the pros and cons of both options, but we recognize that as a pharmaceutical company, we're a part of the drug supply chain, and we have a responsibility to help patients get treatments, especially with migraine. When you think about it, it's such a disabling illness. The last thing you need during an infection of a family member, a spouse, a friend that you might be able to help with is that you get disabled by migraine. And so the chronicity and the disabling factor of migraine said, no, we have to bring this drug and find a way to bring this drug to patients even more so in this time of need. Now, if there was ever a company that I think could thrive in a virtual launch, it was Biohaven. And that's because we were built as a virtual company. We've only been public for a little over 3.5 years. And at first we didn't even have offices, and we've been living in these virtual Zoom meeting environments for years. We had the necessary tools in place. Everyone had been trained on the use of digital technology and virtual meetings. And we'd already been piloting a number of technology approaches to our launch that we're excited about innovating. We just didn't know that we were going to have to be solely reliant on those digital platforms in the COVID environment. So the top part of the slide, I just wanted to highlight to you in gray. It shows our pre-pandemic plan for the launch, which, of course, starts off with your large in-person field sales team that then we were going to augment over time with these digital approaches. And what we had to do, though, is we had to rip up that playbook that we had spent a year preparing on, and we had to innovate. We had to pivot to an almost totally virtual launch. And the bottom part of the slide shows this. And not only do we have to make the decision about whether we're going to launch, or not, how we're going to safely, do it, which tools we were going to use, but we had to do this in a time-critical period, in that we had to make a decision literally within days. Now, the bottom part of the slide shows what became our technology-driven pivot to the launch of Nurtec ODT. With everyone on lockdown at home, we had to find remote ways to teach patients and physicians. We innovated with virtual detailing of physicians, directly activating patients through social media and our celebrity campaign, and even using telemedicine very early to allow patients to get evaluated in their homes and Nurtec ODT prescriptions sent directly to them. Now, as a modern day pharma company and marketer, Biohaven leaned on our agile operating model to really identify the critical launch success factors that would help us propel Nurtec ODT into the marketplace during COVID-19. We had to remain optimistic and find creative solutions to the challenges that were presented to us. We really adapted to the headwinds of COVID-19, and we focused on accelerating awareness with consumers using digital media, optimizing visual engagement with healthcare providers, and establishing new capabilities that would drive conversion. Recognizing that the health crisis could add considerable stress in the lives of people with migraine, Biohaven knew first and foremost we had to continue to get the word out about Nurtec ODT, while at the same time increasing patient accessibility as the challenges of social distancing were beginning to slowly emerge and then heightening. Within days of the initial lockdown, our sales field team redirected their efforts to what was the new normal of COVID-19. We quickly pivoted to virtual engagements with healthcare professionals and accelerated our digital outreach to patients. We utilized Zoom, FaceTime, and online media to engage with physicians while also arranging for remote delivery of product samples and electronically delivering our $0 copay cards so patients could utilize them in the pandemic since they couldn't get to the doctor's offices. We allowed local sales reps to quickly arrange for immediate remote delivery of product samples and even physical copay cards. This efficiently allowed physicians to have what they needed without requiring a rep to physically come to their office. FaceTime and Zoom became the new face to the physician, and we utilized frontline delivery services like UPS and FedEx and others to team up with us so that we can get those samples and physical copay cards to the doctor's offices without having to be there physically and keep things safe. Now, to accelerate our efforts to directly reach patients, we invested and initiated extensive multi-channel social media efforts to transfer knowledge about Nurtec ODT and communicate with those seeking our new treatment. The TV, digital, and social media campaigns that rolled out were quite effective, and here you see some of those campaigns. We had a campaign called Wonderful, which highlighted our one dose working quickly that lasts for 2 days. And we also highlighted real patients like Ellie Weiss, who's in this left middle panel here. And what you see here is Ellie had been on a treatment for over 3 years, but because production studios were shut down during the pandemic, how were we going to get a new message out around the fact that we had remote delivery of medications as a possibility in telemedicine? So team had to be creative. And I remember I drove out to Ellie's home with my iPhone, and we recorded several social media and app clips with Ellie on my iPhone, and then the team was able to use that and come up with one of the streams that you see here, where she's featured with a mask, leaning on her mailbox, saying, look, if you have migraine and you're stuck at home during this pandemic, you can get Nurtec through an online evaluation of telemedicine and then deliver right to your home, right? Really effective. And we literally came up with concept idea, script within days, filmed it on an iPhone within a day after that. And then it was out on social media, and all these techniques very quickly going out on Twitter, Facebook, and other media outlets to be effective. Now, building on the success of our initial social media efforts, we also decided to accelerate and bring forward our direct-to-consumer TV ads. Now, we had filmed these pre-pandemic. However, we hadn't planned on having them in production until much later. So we accelerated those efforts. And here again, you'll see Ellie, who played a key role throughout our programs as a patient ambassador in this ad. And I just wanted to give you a quick look at our 15-second ad, which, by the way, was the first 15-second pharma ad in the industry.
When migraine strikes, there's quick dissolve Nurtec. Don't take if allergic to Nurtec. Side effects include nausea. To pay as little as $0, go to Nurtec.com.
I think you can see how effective that would be when everyone's at home, those people with migraine at home, and then they see an ad like this and very quickly get the messaging of Nurtec, understand that it's available, go to Nurtec.com, our website, and then learn all about the different ways you can get it, whether it's telemedicine, whether it's being put in contact with a physician, or shipped to you. Now, as lockdowns from COVID-19 continued to accelerate, so did our efforts to expand our DTC, and we got even more digital. So we knew we had to expand digital and social media as the pandemic looked like it was settling in and it wasn't going anywhere. So we started to utilize our various platforms and then targeted YouTube, Hulu, WebMD, and many, many others. So we had a very strong online presence. And we didn't just use social and digital strategies to focus on patients. We doubled our share of voice in the healthcare provider digital media space to mitigate the limited rep access that was occurring in the field. We knew we had to educate physicians remotely. They had to become aware and understand and get the knowledge transfer about the profile of Nurtec ODT in order for our launch to be successful. As many of larger pharma companies were just then, a few months later, starting to ramp up on the virtual and social media that we had started days within the pandemic, we were already moving on to other techniques and approaches. And so we were already moving on to things like initiating peer-to-peer physician programs that would further strengthen healthcare provider outreach. And that became very important to us, that we had a lead in these avenues as well. And then it's also important to note that we were very successful with interacting with payers remotely. And I'm very proud of our managed markets team, as well as the payers, who were able to meet virtually, have the right interactions, and secure agreements and coverage, so that the most important payers were giving access to Nurtec ODT, and then a lot of the other smaller payers came in line, as well. And I think what you saw across the industry was payers wanted to make sure they were facilitating people's access to medications, and we had over 80% coverage of commercial insurance within 6 months of our launch. And just to give you a frame of reference on this, normally your goal is to have 80% coverage at the end of 1 year. We were able to effectively get there within a 6-month period, even with just the remote interactions. Now, recognizing that migraine sufferers may experience increased attacks in the stress of the pandemic, we took important steps to increase patient accessibility to Nurtec ODT. This included partnerships with telemedicine platform providers such as Cove, listed here. And on Cove, it was a leading platform that allowed patients to get an online assessment of their migraine and then multiple treatment options. And so very quickly, we established a relationship with Cove, where people who wanted Nurtec could go to our website, hear about Nurtec. On our website, click on the link, get Nurtec now through Cove. Go to Cove, see a doctor, 30 minutes later, have your evaluation completed, and Nurtec on the way to your home. Patients could use this platform, as you see here. That would keep them out of the office, and they could just easily get Nurtec to their home. And this helped abide by the social distancing goals, helped also make sure that patients who didn't have COVID weren't going to doctor's offices where COVID patients were being seen, and also just kept them out of busy healthcare environments, ERs and doctor's offices, and allowed them to remotely get the treatment they needed at home. We had some fun too, and to promote the availability of Nurtec ODT with telemedicine, we also turned to social media to build awareness, right, and drive demand. And we actually employed a number of meme-based ads, as you'll see here, on Facebook, and the response was tremendous. And so again, I think some of the memes that we did really got people's attention and got forwarded around, and all helped spread the word about Nurtec ODT. To continue to amplify the patient voice in our consumer awareness efforts for Nurtec ODT, we also partnered with the Moth to bring forward real-life patient experiences in migraine. And we had 3 storytellers, including Jenny Latson, shown here, gathered for a June event where they all spoke to a remote audience on Nurtec ODT and how it impacted their life, and how they were able to overcome their symptoms with this new treatment. And as you may have seen, of course, in July of 2020, we launched our Take Back Today campaign, which was an integrated digital, social media, and public relations campaign featuring Khloe Kardashian as our Nurtec ODT spokesperson. The Take Back Today campaign is focused on building an online community, providing people with migraine a valuable new forum to share their migraine story and learn from others about ways to better manage their disease so they can go back to what matters most in their lives. And I've been so impressed with Khloe and her role as an ambassador to patients. She's been a migraine sufferer since she was in the 6th grade. And when you hear her stories about how it's impacted her life, and she's kind of kept it sheltered over the years, and she's tried numerous treatments before, and she finally found release with Nurtec ODT. And she is quite a compelling and authentic brand spokesperson for Nurtec ODT. And it really is her powerful voice on digital and social media that allows us to take that message across the broader migraine patient community. Her impact on our Nurtec ODT market efforts was immediate and widespread, dramatically expanding our message reach and engagement with customers. The program was so successful as Chloe is such a powerhouse with a strong social media following with more than 110 million Instagram followers alone.
I am Khloe Kardashian, and I have been suffering with migraines since I've been in the 6th grade. You know, anybody who suffers with migraines know that you miss out on so many things. I have missed trick-or-treating or my sister's birthday parties. I've missed work meetings. I've tried endless prescriptions and nothing has really worked for me until now. I was introduced to Nurtec ODT from my neurologist, and it has worked wonders for me. Within 15 minutes of taking the oral tablet, I have felt such relief. And then within an hour, I am able to go about my day as if nothing happened. Nurtec ODT has given me my day back.
I think that really speaks for itself as to how powerful Chloe was, and we're so grateful that she lent her powerful voice to helping other patients with migraine. And literally, there's a large number of patients now who are benefiting from this treatment because of her. So I have to thank her for her advocacy. Finally, on this slide, so I think the question I'd pose is, did we make the right decision in launching Nurtec ODT in the midst of a COVID-19 global pandemic lockdown? Well, I think patients and investors provide the ultimate answer to that question. But in this slide, I'm very data-driven. I just wanted to share some objective data about how one might answer that question if we made the right decision. So this slide shows the new-to-brand market share, or new brand RX, which is reflective of the portion of new patients coming onto your drug. And you'll see here in gray, our competitor, Ubrelvy, had a 2-month lead on us from their earlier launch prior to the pandemic, and they had 100% of the market share. Now, I want you to take a look of our March launch of Nurtec. And something you'll see here, it's in purple on the purple line, is that we had a steady week-over-week growth thanks to all these digital and technologic tools that we used in this launch, to the point that, I think Biohaven's agile, creative, and technology-driven launch really propelled us into a market-leading position 17 weeks later. And that's right where the line crossed over. We went just above 50% in July, surpassing Ubrelvy as the market leader in oral CGRP therapies. This demonstrated for the first time that an almost entirely digital, social media, and virtual launch could be used successfully to bring new drugs to patients in one of the most difficult environments. This is really an extraordinary testament to our dedicated and unwavering commitment by our team for the patients that we all are here to serve. Our data analyses of this launch, are going to continue to inform us, and we're going to optimize our commercial launch strategies moving forward. You may have heard recently we filed a supplemental new drug application for Nurtec ODT for the prevention of migraine. And if our sNDA is approved, we look forward to a first half 2021 launch. This time we hope, though, it won't be during the COVID lockdown, but we will promise to bring forward many of these digital technology tools that we learned from this past year into a more traditional launch. And so I think in future years, of course, we'll want to leverage some of the best of traditional launch, but now we know the tools that have been optimized that we can employ in future launches with future approvals. Now, finally, I'd like to conclude by thanking the frontline healthcare workers for their heroic efforts during the pandemic, and the scientists and researchers at pharmaceutical companies and the FDA who have worked tirelessly on bringing COVID-19 vaccines and other therapeutics to patients. Companies like Pfizer, J&J, AZ, GSK, Moderna, Regeneron, and others just highlight the pharmaceutical industry here is key to solving some of our nation's most challenging healthcare problems. Once therapeutics are approved to solve COVID-19 and hopefully cure it, the real unsung heroes are going to be those scientists who've been working at the FDA, pharmaceutical companies, and the NIH who all came together to defeat this virus. So thank you all very much.